minutes with Nifemi Oguntoye. We're staying with breaking news developments in the Rivers State leadership tussle. The Supreme Court has delivered a landmark judgment reinstating an order that bars the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the Federation from releasing funds to the state government. In a unanimous decision, the Apex Court also validated the Martins Amewule-led faction of the Rivers State House of Assembly, dealing a significant blow to Governor Siminalayi Fubara's administration. The five-member panel of the Supreme Court also unanimously declared the local government election conducted in Rivers State invalid for violating the Electoral Act. This much talked about dispute has troubled the state for more than a year now. What began as a planned impeachment of Governor Fubara has snowballed into two factions of the Rivers State Assembly, with both factions claiming legitimacy, well, up to now anyways. We're also getting some reaction from the state government itself reacting to the Supreme Court judgment. Just earlier, a few minutes earlier, the Rivers State government issued a statement acknowledging the Supreme Court's judgment on the state's funds and local government administration. According to the statement signed by Honorable Commissioner for Information and Communications, Waresenibo Johnson, the government is awaiting a detailed briefing on the implications of the judgment and will carefully evaluate the situation to determine the next steps. The government also urged Rivers people to remain calm and law-abiding, assuring them that it remains committed to upholding the rule of law. Notably, the statement emphasizes that the Supreme Court's judgment did not address the defection of 27 lawmakers, which is still pending at the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt. We're following this development very closely. Recall that just a few moments after that judgment, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, also commended the Supreme Court's ruling, saying it's an end to impunity in Rivers State. The former governor of Rivers State criticized former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and Chairman of the People's Democratic Party Governors Forum, Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State, accusing them of tacitly endorsing lawlessness in the state. He added that Governor Fubara must adhere to the Supreme Court's ruling, as it is the ultimate legal authority concerning the issue at hand.
Supreme Court has made it very clear that you cannot have a democracy without a legislature. The Supreme Court has made it clear, cannot say that the government without the legislature. It is unheard of where anybody will say 3 people will constitute an assembly to make laws for the entire state. It's unheard of. It has nothing to do with an individual, whether you like this person's face or not. But it is what is important is that can 3 people make law for a state? Not to even talk about the appropriation. The Federal High Court said, look, you can't do this. You cannot do it. And therefore, set aside everything they've done. 3 people will screen commissioners. 3 people will all kinds of things.
You can watch the full version of the FCT Minister's press briefing on the Supreme Court judgment later today at 8 p.m. on TVC News. Lawyer Liborous Oshoma joins me on the program to break down the landmark Supreme Court judgments and its implication on political developments in Rivers. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Nifemi.
We're seeing some key points from the Supreme Court judgment, and they center around legitimizing the Martins Amewule-led House of Assembly, stopping Rivers State government's funding until a budget is presented, and of course declaring the local government election invalid. What do you make of this new development? Did you see this coming?
Nifemi, this has been my position right from when this matter started. I had consistently repeated on your program and other platforms, and I have repeatedly said it, that the provisions of section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G, is not executory. It's not self-executory. I have used everyday analogy to explain it, that it is like when we say the penalty for murder is death. When somebody commits murder, it will still take the courts to make a pronouncement on it to say you have committed murder and this is the penalty. In the same vein, when the provisions of section 109, subsection 1, paragraph G says, if you defect, who determines the defection? It is the court that will, even though subsection 2 says the speaker shall give effect to the provisions of subsection 1, the court had gone further to say that until the court rules that this person has actually defected and declares his seat vacant, it is not in the mouth of anybody to say that I will not recognize you as a member until because you have defected. So what the Supreme Court simply said today, even though they had not determined the matter of defection, what the Supreme Court simply did was they made that pronouncement expressly that until the issue of defection is determined, the members still remain valid members of the Rivers State House of Assembly. And any action done without them is a nullity, is a null and void. Passing of budget, screening of commissioners, and any action that requires the concurrence or the approval of the State House of Assembly without including these people is a nullity, is executive rascality, is a joke taken too far. So by implication, what the Supreme Court is saying is that this position, this section of the law is not self-executory.
Absolutely.
That's what the Supreme Court has simply said.
The issue of defection is still with the River State High Court. The River State government is really counting on that based on the press statement they released a few moments ago. We're going to touch on that shortly. But how does this ruling, how do you see this ruling impact on the current political landscape in Rivers? What implications does this have for Governor Fubara's administration?
Governor Fubara should be praying, and I'm saying this with every sense of modesty. He should be praying that the chief judge of the Rivers State is not part of all of this political, is not taking side in any of the political game that is playing. Otherwise, the actions of Governor Fubara are impeachable actions. They are impeachable offenses, despite the clear provisions of the... If I were Governor Fubara, I would sack my Attorney General today, because he had advised him wrongly. He has led him on, deceiving him, believing that, because he's not a lawyer, believing that the provisions of that law is self-executory, and so that the governor can decide to choose who to recognize. And then he went on and on with 3 members, despite the clear provisions of Section 91 of the Constitution that says that a House of Assembly of a state shall not have less than 25 members and not more than 40. And that despite all of that, Governor Fubara had gone ahead to recognize 3 members. Indeed. They sit down in the comfort of their sitting room and then legislate. A budget is presented to you in the morning. Despite the convention of budget screening, budget defense, budget is presented in the morning, and by afternoon, the budget is passed and assigned, a budget of 800 billion, another one for 1.2 trillion, and then the money is spent. These are impeachable offenses. So that's why, for me, I think he should eat the obu pie, find a middle ground with these 27 lawmakers, pay them all the allowances that the Supreme Court has heard, and then you can pursue the case of defection at the Federal High Court that you are consistently pursued. They had initially gone to the State High Court, and the Court of Appeal ruled that the State High Court had no jurisdiction to determine that matter in the first place. And so the Federal High Court, the Court of Appeal haven't ruled on that. I think that would have been the best time to recognize them instead of all of these shenanigans of, you will not recognize. Despite not having a defense in a matter at the Federal High Court, you still went ahead to Supreme Court. And what are you expecting the Supreme Court to interpret?
For the 10th time, we're hearing the Apex Court saying that 3 is no more than 27, just like 4 is no more than 35 in other states. And, absolutely. But there is the political mix in all of this. You heard the FCT minister saying that, just like you have said earlier, that Governor Fubara has committed some impeachable offenses. What do you consider the political dynamics, considering what has been a very tough contest between both parties in the past months? Do you see these 27 lawmakers going ahead to kickstart an impeachment proceeding against Mr. Governor?
Yeah, but quickly, before I answer that question, you see, in Rivers State, it is PDP. In Lagos State, it is APC. So that's why people say there are no opposition. They all behave alike. APC members are condemning what PDP is doing in Rivers. Yet, in Lagos State, they're quiet with the shenanigans that Obasai is displaying with the aid of police in Lagos State House of Assembly, where you sit, you want to sit as a speaker over 4 members of a State House of Assembly, when 36 members had consistently said, you know what, you are no more their speaker. Anyway, that's an aside. But that's why I said the position of impeachment, as spelled out in Section 188 of the Constitution, it's a robust provision that requires both the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And you know that the chief judge will have to set up a 7-man panel that will investigate the allegation, any allegation raised by the legislature, and then make returns. And then also there'll be compliance with the twin pillars of natural justice or the authoritarian pattern, which means you must hear the other side. There must be a defense, unlike those kangaroo processes we saw in Edo and all of that. So I think it will not be that easy for them to impeach the governor, which is why I would have just been wondering why the governor will not recognize these members, even though he knows fully well that it will be difficult for them to achieve that impeachment. But with the way it's going now, even people who had hitherto, be sympathetic to his cause will just feel that, the governor is just being high-handed and, working against the Constitution, and they might withdraw their sympathies.
As we speak today, the Supreme Court has recognized the Martins Amewule-led faction as the legitimate River State House of Assembly. We're going to talk about the implication of this for Governor Fubara. You've talked about the processes lined up for an impeachment process in case they go that path. We're going to look at the timeline vis-a-vis the timeline for getting a definite decision as regards their defection from their purported defection from the PDP to the APC. But that'll be right after this break. Stay with us, everyone. This evening, it appears the River State government is really counting on the case before the State High Court as regards the defection of the lawmakers prior to this time. Walk us through the timeline, just in case the 27 members intend to kickstart a process of impeachment. Do you think they have enough time to see that other case through to the apex court?
Yeah, if the 27 members, the question here is, the way the APC plays their game. They would rather, kickstart the process, no matter how you kangaroo the process would be. And at the end of the day, they tell you go to court. So I do not think the governor should allow it even get to that level, because the process is, a notice will be served by a member to the speaker alleging that the person whose name appeared on the notice has committed impeachable offenses. And then once the vote is taken and it is subsequently referred to the committee, if the vote members agree that the matter should be referred to a committee. And at the end of the day, it's the chief judge would be asked to constitute a 7-man panel to investigate. And in that 7-man panel, both parties would make representation to that panel for and against. And thereafter, a recommendation will be sent to the State House of Assembly for a debate. And if at the end of the day, the allegations are weighty and established and a debate is taken on it, and 2/3 majority of the members vote in favor.
Indeed.
And then the person starts impeached. But if otherwise, then that will be the end of the matter. So and that's why I say that here you must have the buy-in of the state's chief judge to constitute a 7-member panel. And from what we have seen most times with this impeachment, they look for people who will just rubber stamp the allegations that had been raised. And so I don't see the 27 lawmakers. I don't see it. It won't be an easy feat for them to just impeach Governor Fubara. So those fears entertained by him and the allegations of demolition of the House of Assembly complex and the rest, and really, like Supreme Court has said, they are unwarranted, they are uncalled for. So
Indeed.
as a governor, as a leader, as a governor is supposed to be a leader, you should be able to manage the intricacies, of and the complexity of leadership. Considering the fact also, I would also do not sit down here and also say that the high-handedness of the former governor sometimes can be overbearing. But as a leader, you should be able to manage, by the former governor, I mean Wike now, his high-handedness sometimes can be overbearing, with this larger-than-life posture at all of the time. We're always wanting to have, take the shine of everything, certainly. But
I hear you.
This is somebody who I've worked with.
Yes.
This is somebody he has worked with over time. So I think he should have been able to manage it.
Well,
especially considering the intervention of Mr. President at some point.
It's the exact point I wanted to make, that Wike was Wike when he supported him as governor, and he enjoyed the support. So you shouldn't expect anything to change afterwards. If you're
that's why.
If your comment of high-handedness is to be taken to be true, but I want us to move away from that shortly, because
quickly,
yes.
Nifemi. Wike once said, once you give somebody a goat, remove your hand from the rope. So there's difference between you working with him before you became governor and then becoming a governor. If you don't understand the powers of a governor in Nigeria, you certainly understand why governors always have problems with their godfathers, except for Lagos State.
The Supreme Court, except for Kogi State as well, there are quite a number of other governors who are
Kogi is just starting now.
Who are proven otherwise. Well, compared to what happened in Rivers, it didn't take him 3 months before the fight kick started. But the Supreme Court today barred the CBN and the Accountant General of the Federation from releasing funds to Rivers State government until it complies with court orders. Do you see any immediate consequences of this ruling for state governors and finances? If it doesn't get money from federal government, it sounds like it's rich, right? The people in the state might not necessarily feel the impact instantly. Or what do you think?
No, certainly they will feel the impact instantly, considering the fact that already there's hunger in the land, people are complaining. So certainly the impact would be, unimaginable. Also, because the state government would want money, they certainly will introduce some taxes. And so you'll find cases where the people will have to bear multiple taxation. Already they are complaining about multiple taxation. So now that allocations will not come to the state government, allocations will not come to the federal, local government, then the squeeze is going to be massive. And so they will have to look for ways to make money. And when you are not credit worthy, certainly banks will find it difficult also, giving you loans because your allocations are withheld and then you fail to comply. That's why for me at this stage, I think that, like I said on another platform, that Governor Siminalayi Fubara should eat the humble pie. And by eating the humble pie, is the leader, is his tenure that people will remember anyway, who was governor at that time. Nobody will remember who was speaker. Nobody will remember who was majority leader, who was chief of staff. It's his tenure. Nobody will remember who was his oppositor. So it is tenure that people will remember. So that I think at this stage, he should find a middle ground and find a way to work with these members. Considering also the fact that, you saw the members that resigned from his cabinet after the truce was agreed on by the president, and then some persons around the corridors of power started advising him otherwise, as if they know better. And now we are where we are. So I think it is time now for him to lock his door. Don't listen to advice from these people that do not mean well. And then these are his brothers, these are his colleagues. They've worked together for years. And it is just what you have. There are no permanent enemies or permanent friends. What you have is permanent interest. They can realign and just have, they say when two incompatible mates, they can coexist if only they agree to agree and agree to disagree. So they can agree to agree and agree to disagree.
Interesting days lie ahead. I'm sure Governor Fubara is activating his think tank to know exactly what to do next in this regard. But I want to hear your interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling as regards saying that the local government election held a few months ago is invalid. We hear that caretaker committee is now unconstitutional. How do you think the state government is expected to implement this particular judgment? And what does it mean for these local government chairmen that have just been elected?
Nifemi, it's how do they say, catch 22 or catch 42 situation. You know what? It is like saying this is how we have been doing it. We have not been complying with the law, but the day you fall out of line and your house is not in order, those same people that have consistently, violated the law with you are the first that we go to court to say, look, a lot of things have not been done right. You remember the election petition that brought Liborous Oshoma as governor of Edo State? There were allegations that it was opposition because they could not agree. Chief Aneni of blessed memory and Professor Osumbo, because they could not agree, a faction went to give information to the Oshomole camp. So I see the same thing playing out here. You say, oh, this is how we have been doing it. And, some members now feel, look, you have been doing it that way does not mean that it's in compliance with the law. That before election, there must be display of register. The accurate time must be followed. And that display of register for claims and objections, failure to so do will mean that you have, violated the provisions of the Constitution. And so you cannot even abridge the time. So when you now fail to do all of that, you say, well, after all, we have not been doing it. And then the time for nominations, also must be complied with. So in the absence of all of that, and you say, oh, after all, we states comply with this. Those states do not comply with them does not mean that that's not the provisions of the law. The fact that somebody has not challenged it does not mean also that is not the law. And so the fact that now somebody is challenging it, and the court looks at the provision of the law and say, well, when were these actions carried out? And the actions were carried out clearly without giving the appropriate notice and also without all of those registers for claims and objections. And the court said, well, having not complied with the condition precedent to conducting an election conducted cannot stand, and it is therefore declared null and void. And now, the challenge here is now that you can't appoint caretaker committees. Even if you appoint caretaker committees, that means they cannot get allocation until you conduct a valid election. And in conducting a valid election, you are going to include the members that you have been trying to push away. They will certainly participate in that election. And how well also that election also goes will be another round of problems. So it is not yet to huru for River State. The problem is NYSC. Now your suffering continues.
Good place to live in. Liborous Oshoma, lawyer, thank you so much for joining us at such short notice. Good to have you always.
My pleasure.
Well, that's our show today, everyone. And now Governor Fubara has the answer to the 27-member House of Assembly led by Martins Amewule. Will he comply with the Supreme Court order? If it doesn't, what are the implications? Interesting days lie ahead for Rivers. That's our show today. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.